This show is sponsored by ODYS Global. Make sure that you do sign up and get a free $100 bonus by checking out ODYS Global's Age Domains or Done For You affiliate websites. Hi guys, and welcome to episode 35 of SEO Tales, where Itamar and I are going to be discussing Twitter for SEO and what you can do, or what you can actually do with Twitter to help benefit your SEO campaigns in one way or another. So Itamar, Twitter is obviously a platform that you and I will agree to disagree on in terms of the overall usage of it, but that does not mean that you can't use Twitter to help your SEO, whether that's building your brand, whether that's driving traffic to your website for click-through rate, or whether you simply post your blogs on there and maybe Twitter, by posting in social media, including Twitter, it gets your stuff indexed that little bit quicker. But I'm sure there's many other benefits that we can use Twitter for. So in your opinion, given that you're probably more of a proactive Twitter user than me, tell us some of the benefits from your side, from an SEO point of view, you think that Twitter offer.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, Twitter is a very authoritative platform. And whenever you search up people, generally on the SERP, you're going to see their Twitter profile come up. There might be a kind of snippet where there's some cards of recent tweets that they've posted, but that chunk of the SERP is really important to have, especially when it comes to things like dealing with, say, if you're a brand or a person dealing with negative SEO, if we're talking about reputation management in general, it's important for you to be able to make the most of the SERP for your own brand name or your personal name, and have that with, assets that you control. And I think for that reason, it's really important to have a Twitter account anyway, even if you're not so active on it, just so that you can get it indexed when people search for you or they search for your brand. But I think when we move it towards using the platform itself, I think it's very powerful in terms of developing your brand, in terms of finding new audiences, but also getting your name out there. Because let's think, if you're starting off, let's say you're an agency, you're starting off, you're not going to really know anyone or have anyone connected with you on places like Twitter. And the one thing that Twitter is great at is it's very easy to start getting engagement when you don't have a profile that's so developed or you haven't been around for a while. So the example that I can give you is my own personal one, where you're starting out in SEO, you want to develop connections, you want to be seen, and you want to be heard. So you participate in different things like Twitter chats, which are essentially chats that these different brands or people host every week, and you can engage with people using that particular hashtag, and people start to kind of see you and remember you over time if you are there consistently. So I was active on the SEMrush one, so they have their weekly Twitter chat on Wednesdays, and I was doing that every single week for a long time. And what did that lead to? It led to me getting lots of retweets from SEMrush, and this is an account that's got over 100,000 followers. So when you think of the reach that you can get just by sharing your knowledge and adding value, then you can see the benefits. But again, I think this is only possible if you are the type of person who wants to give before you can get, because you can't just go on Twitter and start asking for things, because nobody really owes you anything. The way to kind of get the ball rolling is when people notice the value that you're sharing, and then they retweet it or they follow you, etc., etc. So I think that's the kind of perfect start for it in terms of using it for SEO purposes, because all of that at the end of the day can lead to, these connections can lead to links. It can lead to you appearing on podcasts, webinars, just essentially really branching out and finding new audiences. So for me, it worked quite really well so far. But sometimes people just use it differently, I suppose. And Craig, you've used Twitter, I guess, slightly differently, or you've got slightly different reasons of how to use it and stuff like that. So it'd be good to hear from you about, how you use it, what's good about it, and what's the not so good part.
I think obviously, as you say, taking up more of the landscape on Google is one thing. So if you're using it from a reputation management point of view, or you just want to take up more of the landscape on the SERPs for your brand name or whatever, then it's a great thing to do, because obviously Google take Twitter very seriously and have, you've got the Twitter carousel or whatever you want to call it. And I think strategically it would make perfect sense to be taking up more of the landscape just from a business point of view. So I've always had Twitter purely because I think strategically it's the right thing to do. I'm just not that engaged on it. And, I've had my Twitter for 10 years nearly, and I probably was more proactive in years gone past. And I think, when you're young, naive and stupid, you were on there, and I used to have a lot of debates with people and stuff like that. And now sometimes I would just spark a debate just to get into an SEO conversation, not to be, a dick as such, or if I seen something I disagreed on, I would go on there and say that, this is BS and try and get some conversation going on there. It used to then bring a lot of negativity, in my opinion. You used to get fights, you used to get arguments and stuff like that. And for me, as I've said in the previous episode where we spoke about platforms, I think negativity, no one really has time for that crap in their life. We've all got better things to be doing, like earning money or spending time on things that are going to benefit us more. And for me, Twitter just brings a little bit of negativity. Maybe it's just in my head, my mindset of always being on there fighting with people. But even sometimes now, I see things all the time, people debating and arguing, and you've always got these, quite vicious comments on there from people who are faceless, just eggheads and stuff like that. So I think in terms of security and what Twitter is, you either block yourself to the wider audience that you're trying to attract in, which I think you're going to find harder to scale, or you have to put up with that garbage. And I think for me, I've always used it in a way. So if I do SEO Tales episode 35, like this one, and I'm putting that out, I'll use Twitter. Why not? I've got a lot of followers on there, and that, I put it out. Now, what I don't do, Itamar, and you probably tell me that I should be doing this, but I'm just going to throw this back onto you. I don't really add hashtags and anything like that. Now, I've built up a fairly decent following on social media because of like speaking at conferences, and appearing in webinars and working with SEMrush, and a whole bunch of other stuff has allowed me to form quite a big following across social media. So it wasn't me starting from scratch trying to build a name for myself using the right hashtags and stuff like that. So I wasn't using it in the same way that maybe someone like you were, trying to use hashtags or, get into Twitter chats and stuff like that. Now, I have done Twitter chats. I've been a guest on SERPstat, SEMrush, and various other Twitter chats, but I wasn't using it strategically like maybe we should be. So flipping this back onto you, if, as I say, I was fortunate enough to be able to speak at events and hosting SEMrush webinars and stuff, which attributed to me being able to get a much bigger following quite quickly. I was piggybacking on all of that stuff. But for someone who maybe doesn't like speaking, or maybe doesn't have the opportunity to speak yet or whatever, how can you use Twitter to get decent traction? I know hashtags play a big part in it, but I want to dig a bit deeper. What should we be doing? What is the right process for using those hashtags to get more followers?
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna be a bit well, it's not even controversial. I mean, I think it's just you've got to be realistic. I think if you were to type in hashtag SEO on Twitter now, the live feed is going to change probably once every 1 or 2 seconds, because people are overusing hashtags on Twitter. That's just always been a thing. So, if you're just going to go put out a tweet and do hashtag SEO, hashtag digital marketing, you shouldn't expect really to get more than 1 or 2 likes, maybe, because it's overly saturated. And people who are using hashtags and things like that, and they're sifting through them, that's going to be difficult. The one thing where you can get traction is if people add you to lists. So, people are only going to add you to lists if they feel like, your account is good enough reason to be added to a list where people should actually listen to you. So I think if you're starting out and you don't have a massive platform where you can't really voice your opinion on different things just yet, you need to really be strategic in who you're engaging with, because there are so many accounts. Like, there's an abundance of accounts on Twitter that talk about SEO, but it's about identifying which ones you need to be engaging with more than others, I guess. So a good place to start would be tools. So big SEO tools, the likes of SEMrush, you've got Screaming Frog, who are quite active as well. You need to find these tools that have lots of followers, but you need to do a bit more digging. You need to take a look at their tweets and replies, more so than just the tweets on their profile, because you need to be able to see, are these people actually engaging with their followers, with people who, create conversation with them? And that's really important for you, because otherwise you'll just be wasting your time. If you're going to say tweet directly at Neil Patel, but he's not going to give a damn about, who you are, what you're going to say, and he's not going to reply to you, that's just a waste of your time. So you need to be strategic in terms of who you engage with. And I think Twitter chats are absolutely amazing for that. They're probably the best chance that you've got to be able to engage with people, especially if it's a topic that you know really well. So there were times where I'd go on like the SEMrush Twitter chat on Wednesday, and there was a time where they were talking about YouTube SEO, for instance, in one of the chats. And I was just going on and engaging with everyone who was commenting, adding my insights, trying to extend the conversation, because that did very, very good things for me, because people will start noticing what I'm saying. They'll look at the content itself. They'll be like, wow, this is a really good point. I didn't think of that. They might follow you. They might like it. They might, reply saying how good that was and include the hashtag of the Twitter chat, which then again could get retweets, this, that, and the other. So you've got to be very smart, and you need to pick and choose where you're going to be engaging with, because you're not going to have time. It's going to be a waste of your time to try and engage with everyone and, absolutely everyone in the SEO sphere, because that's just a waste of time and it's not going to get you anywhere. So I think if you do struggle at the beginning, just hit up some Twitter chats, or just generally just learn stuff and start creating some interesting posts about case studies, or, this is what I did, here's what I found, and then start, you can even just DM people, be like, hey, look, you DM somebody with a bigger following than you, say, look, I did this study, it was pretty cool. If feel free to check it out and give me your thoughts. Because that, maybe 5 times out of 10 you might get a response. And if people really like it when they look into it, they might retweet it. And then it's all about just a cumulative effort to raise your profile and raise your followers. And don't start Twitter hoping that you'll get verified or some shit like that, because that's not going to work. You're not going to get verified. So, you need to approach it in the sense of, I want to connect with as many high profile SEO people, or whoever it is in your niche, as possible. So that's always got to be the approach. And it's always about giving more than getting, because there are way too many people, for example, who will just DM you asking you, if you want to buy something. But the one last point I would say, which is very important, is about, you need to be pruning your own follower account. So the reason why you do this is because you want to have your followers and have a large percentage of, engagement to follower ratio, where if I get, sometimes someone follows me, I look at their profile, the first thing I do is I click on their likes, because I want to see, does this person engage with other people's tweets? If they don't, and I see they don't like anything, I just block them. Because once I block them, they're removed from my, they can't see my tweets. They're not a follower of mine anymore. And that's important. And I do the same thing where people follow me and they've got as their homepage link, or the link that they have on their profile, goes to Fiverr. Because again, that's just somebody who's going to want to sell me a service. They're not going to give a damn about what I'm tweeting, etc. So I block them as well. So I think you've got to prune your connections, because it really does show when you've got an account that's got a few hundred followers but gets maybe a 10% engagement rate, where you've got 30 plus maybe likes or retweets per tweet. That's going to be a lot better than an account that's got 50,000 followers that gets maximum 1 to 3 likes per tweet. So that's really big, and people do notice that as well. People do have an eye for that, because we all know what engagement is. We all know how important it is. We all know how to essentially sift out, the good accounts from accounts that have probably just bought a bunch of followers, or they've got not great engagement, because that adds to your perception. So if somebody sees my account and I've got like a minimum of 10% engagement rate on all my tweets, people are going to think, wow, this account is really, really good. So they might follow me, they might retweet, etc., etc. It's just, you've got to think about it more carefully, I think. So that's the last thing I would say.
Interesting. And as you say, if you're going to have a Twitter, I think, trying to get that engagement and make it work for you is essential. You can't just have it and hope that it's going to automatically bring you business, leads, followers, or whatever it might be. With anything, it's the same as other platforms like YouTube or whatever. You've got to work at it. You've got to create content. You've got to create a buzz around about you and the information that you're giving out. Otherwise, you're not going to get that traction, because there's someone else who will take that traction from it. And probably something I should be taking on board myself is maybe trying to do a little bit more in Twitter. But again, I probably won't. But it's good to know that it can work for you and for other people. As I say, it might not work that well for me personally, because I just have a dislike for it. But certainly opportunities are there to get growth, get your name out there, build your brand, build a following, build a community, get involved in the community, and all of the other good stuff that can come from that. So certainly never turn your nose up at that. Even becoming friends with certain people in the SEO industry. Twitter's probably a good way to do that. And it's not always about what you know. Sometimes it's about who you know, and that's always a good thing to consider as well. So is there anything else I should be asking you about Twitter out of curiosity, or have we pretty much covered the benefits?
I think we've pretty much covered most of the benefits. I think, the final note to say is that Twitter is a platform that can either do absolute wonders for you or do absolutely nothing for you. And that's all just down to how you approach it. So, I'll just echo it again. Go on there to give value, go on there to look for the right people, know how to audit accounts that you're looking at and engaging with, and just always try and the one thing that you said, which is really important, is once you do have a following, you need to find a way to move that somewhere else. Because, Twitter's not going to make you the money, right? So you want to use your following to essentially maybe push them onto your website, push them onto a particular, maybe if it's a course that you're selling, or a particular, service or tool that you've got. Just, use that and just use the following you have and just branch it out to other platforms. I'd say that's quite an important thing to do.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. Well, thank you very much for the insights on Twitter. I guess we will wrap up here. And thank you everyone for watching. If you have any other tips for Twitter, or something that we've not covered and you feel that there's something we could be adding value to, please leave it in the comments below and let the guys watching this get the benefit of your wisdom. And we will see you on the next show. Cheers.
Cheers.